somebody honking up their ring so bad in all my life. Um, so, it's little things that make the difference. And I just find it, so many people are so wrapped up in their lives, they get road rage, and you've got all these corporations who think they're in control, but actually, when you look at the figures, things are actually starting to collapse big time. The housing market is grinding to a halt. What you're going to see in a minute is a drying up of credit. The Bank of England's already said they're going to make it harder to borrow a mortgage. Right? Mark Carnage said that last week. And there's a reason for that. It's because there isn't any money. The banks are bankrupt. Theresa May said today that we can't take on more debt because we're just going to pile more and more debt onto our children and their children. It's too late for that. The UK owes over $1 trillion, and our liabilities rack up to over $3 trillion, and that interest is compounded. And there is no way on this planet that the UK can ever pay its debt back. So for her to say that, she's one of two things, isn't it? It's either she hasn't got any idea how money works, or she's lying. And I don't think she's got any idea how money works, because I think somebody who's intelligent to that, they've either got a gun to her head, or they just kept her in the dark, fed her lots of shit like a mushroom. So I'm not sure, but she's a political puppet, whatever happens. So whoever's in control behind the scenes is just running her. So money's running out. The system's crumbling from the bottom, and you know what happens when the foundations crumble in a building? The building falls over. Money's getting tighter, people are getting poorer. I heard an interesting discussion today on the real inflation rate. And the real inflation rate is in double figures. We're talking 11-12%. And I've thought that for a while, because I don't know if you remember back in 2008, Tesco's just hiked all their prices up, didn't they? Overnight. It went from like 60p for a loaf of bread to 92p for a loaf of bread overnight. And everybody was just wandering around going, oh, I wonder what happened, including me, because I didn't know anything about any of this stuff then. I didn't understand how money worked, and nobody can understand. And the reason why is because nobody lent Tesco's any money, so they didn't have any working capital, so they had to raise it somewhere, so they had to put the prices up to cover their working capital. This is why 6 months later they sold off all their US shops and all their shops in Hong Kong and all these places, because they couldn't afford it to run them, because nobody lent them any money. This is going to happen again, but it's going to happen all over with everything. And there's going to be mass layoffs. You won't be able to borrow money for love nor money. They're talking about restricting issuing credit cards. And let's face it, the amount of unsecured debt in this country, I'd like to see. I mean, there'll be one or two things happen. They'll either have to write off all this debt, which if we brought back a Bradbury pound would happen. They just turn around and say to the banks, well, we're just not paying you. Bye. Shut the door on the way out and issued a Bradbury the next morning. And or everybody gets employed as a debt collector. to go around and collect debts from people that haven't got any money, which would be highly amusing. Big problem with a collapsing economy like that is that we've now started noticing that if you think about it, right, 100 years ago you'd go downtown and you'd get your shoes repaired in the cobblers, wouldn't you? You'd get your bread from the bakers. Bloke would come round with a cart with milk on the back. Yeah, there was at least one slaughterhouse in every town. Farmers used to bring their animals into town, and they would be slaughtered in town and then sold on, or beef and that would be salted up, sent to London and that by train. This is why towns grew up as isolated little conurbations, because they were little like hubs, and then those hubs would transfer their goods to bigger hubs and so on and so forth. But that doesn't happen anymore. Everything comes in, Tesco's is running out of bread, so the tills automatically register it, and then it gets registered up in the distribution centre. The manager, if he doesn't bother changing the amounts, then it will automatically come in on the next lorry. Just in time, they call it, just in time. But certainly in industry, it's grown the reputation as just too late, because anything out of the ordinary screws it right up. And so what happens if the supermarket shelves go empty? You've got to get food from somewhere. If you live in a big city, you're not in a great situation. But if you've got a plan, you can get away from a big city, or you can know where to go, or you can store some food, or you can there's lots of things you can do. And I just think that everybody should start thinking out the box a little bit. If this doesn't happen and it all gets sorted out, then great. But if it does, then any scenario like that, I mean, the government's own figures that reckon if something like that happened, that something like 40% of the people would be dead within 6 months. That's a lot of people. In this country, what's that? That's about 20 million people. No wonder they're building incinerators all over the place. Have you ever wondered why these incinerators are all over the place? I wonder why they're not recycling properly. They're just building incinerators. Yeah, just think about that for a minute. So our German friends used to build incinerators like these. We bought a fridge freezer really recently, and I said, I don't want that fridge freezer. She said, well, why not? What's wrong with it? And I said, it's an AEG. She said, well, yeah, and I said, well, they made the ovens for Auschwitz. Yes, they did. I've seen photographs of the oven doors with AEG stamped on them. So I'm digressing now, aren't I? But that's the worst case scenario, and Jesus is coming, but between now and then, he's not far away. Could be tomorrow, could be in a couple of years' time, but he's coming, and you need to make peace with him, and you also need to make peace with yourself and think out of the box a little bit. If nothing else, it'll get you out in the countryside for some nice walks, or learn some new skills, or get yourself some window boxes, do some gardening, if you've never done it before, or learning to cook. That's a skill that a lot of people have lost these days. And take it from me, cooking on an open fire, see if you go camping somewhere. But cooking on an open fire is completely different to shoving it in the oven or in the microwave. You usually end up with burnt offerings. It's quite fun though. Anyway, I'm going to go now, but in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be doing a program about weight loss, because I'm a big boy, but I've started a new diet. So I'm not gonna say any more. I'm gonna see how it goes for the first month, and then I'm gonna do a video on it. So have a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you all later on.